Okay, so welcome to the May meeting of the Southampton Villa Planning Commission. So we have been working over the last year as a result of a study that we commissioned, or they should say the Village Trustees commissioned from Studio AB Architects, who outlined 11 items that they thought should be studied further for potential inclusion in the zoning text. Two of which were approved by the trustees, I think 2 months ago now. When we had our last meeting, the Planning Commission in April, one thing we all talked about was an item that was originally written as require removal of cesspools and enhanced treatment of wastewater for all new construction and any renovation that increases the number of bedrooms. That was the item in the report. There's been a lot of work going on in the last year by the county and by others in relation to those issues, and we thought it would be worth talking about at the commission as we consider whether or not to pursue that. Mark Schiffer's been doing some research which we want to talk about tonight. We were hoping to have some speakers tonight, which I guess we don't, but we're going to go through the issue anyway.
Yes.
Okay?
Unfortunately, there was a lot of conflicts in terms of time, and we could not get any outside speakers. But I did meet with the health department, and I can give you a little rundown of.
Let me give maybe a little context to it. So we were meeting, I guess, talking about a year ago about the possibility of a sewer system in the central business district. We had a lot of comments on that. There was a tremendous concern about the cost of that. It's still something that I think is sort of on the agenda to be thought about. Certainly conditions in the lake haven't got better since then. One of the things that we heard in the workshops and from the study by Studio B is given the nature of most of the residential neighborhoods in the village, where we have tremendous drainage on the South Fork, as we all know, north-south. Basically the entire village is in an area that the state would consider in need of enhanced treatment of wastewater, just given the very high water table here. So, one thought is, can we do things on individual sites that will avoid us facing in a decade having to put in the sewers throughout the village, which would be enormously expensive. And in effect, is there a sort of incremental way of addressing those issues that avoids a big bill later on? That's sort of where this idea originally came from. And I should add that some people, when they build their houses now, are in fact doing enhanced treatment. So. With that, sorry, I'll let you continue.
All right, so by way of background also,
right.
So the health department has started a program to look into those advanced treatment systems that substantially reduce the nitrogen output from the regular septic systems. And the reduction is like maybe 30 to 40 times less out of those systems than a regular septic system. Also, last September, the health department revised their standards for single-family septic systems, requiring a baffle they put on the smaller septic system, which was also in itself a big enhancement. But before that, in Suffolk County, the health department were accepting what's called a large drop tube and no baffle in the tank. So that's also.
And what does the baffle do, Mark?
Well, the baffle basically really creates two areas in the tank where there is a primary digestion and a secondary digestion, and then after that it goes into a leaching field.
When you say health department, you mean the Suffolk County Health
Suffolk County Health Department. The Suffolk County Health Department. So this was, I think, a good improvement that they did in September, and at the same time they started to look into approving those enhanced water systems, those enhanced wastewater systems, which are really like a piece of equipment that has pumps, aeration, various tanks, and and there are like many companies that produce and make those systems. So they went into this pilot system where they installed maybe 24 systems from various manufacturers in various places in Suffolk County, from Santa Mauritius all the way down to East Hampton. And right now there are 4 systems that have been provisionally approved by the health department. And other manufacturers or other groups are coming along to get their systems approved by the health department. So they install those systems in houses, and they've been monitoring the output from those systems. So right now there are 4 systems, and the major ones are Oranco, Noveco, Hydro Water. These are some of the major manufacturers that were approved. So right now, the next step for the health department was to modify what we call Article 6 of the Suffolk County Health Code, whereby they would like to mandate the use of those type of systems on new construction and major alteration. And major alteration being whatever increases the number of bedrooms, or in the case of a commercial, anytime there is a change of use for the property. So they came up with this new Article 6, which I have a copies here if you want to take a look at. And right now, they're at the stage of meeting with work groups and the stakeholders about this proposed Article 6. And the next step will be to bring it to the legislature, the county legislature. We then vote on it and possibly enact it to be in effect by possibly January 1st of next year. Now, when I discussed with the health department, they were not so keen on having a village mandating the use of those type of systems. They thought it was really within the purview of the county, not of the municipalities to do so. So in terms of their comments from the stakeholders, the Long Island Builders Institute does not look at those revisions in a favorable way. They thought that it was too broad, that requirement to require for any new construction, and they thought it should only be first applied in sensitive areas where either the water table is high, or waterfront areas, or within certain distance of wetlands.
I can hear.
Yeah. So they thought that the Long Island Builders Institute thought that this really should be more of a phased-in approach rather than suddenly requiring for any type of new construction. Those new systems do require maintenance. There are moving parts. There are also and this maintenance requirement, they are also enacting another set of regulations to be able to license people to actually maintain these systems. So it would be like really for you having another air conditioning system in the house where you will have to have yearly maintenance and so forth. So there's an added cost initially, and then there's a yearly cost to those systems.
And I think
Did they tell you how much it was? I mean, just out of curiosity. Did they give you any idea what they run?
Well, those
So
enhanced.
let me repeat, because I don't think it's going to, Charlie's not going to be able to hear that. So the quick question was, how much do we think these run, the maintenance of these systems?
How much the maintenance cost? The initial cost is about double what a septic system would cost.
So what does a septic system cost, you think?
Let's see, if a septic system costs between $5,000 and $7,000, those systems would cost between $10,000 to $14,000.
Right.
And then then there will be a maintenance cost. And also there's this issue that when you have seasonal use of those systems, they need to be sort of restarted at the beginning of the season when you start to have a heavier use. It's not. So there are some pros and cons on those systems. I think it's for, in terms of protection of the the water and creating
Right.
wastewater. It's a very, very good thing, but it's,
Mark, do they have a sense of how much what, is there a percentage that reduction that it creates, or?
it's actually like, it's like maybe 30% less. It's
Right.
substantially
Right,
less.
right, so it's a very big impact.
It's a very, very, very big impact.
Right.
Yes.
If you have a question, can you, sorry, because Charlie's not going to be able to hear this, can you just stand up and come here?
I don't have to go up there.
Or I'll repeat it then, just so that the public can hear
My
it.
question is, where has there ever been a case of a septic system polluting groundwater that has at least 4 foot of sand below it in Suffolk County? Why are you trying to make another law where there's no problem existing?
The question is, why are we trying to make another law about the septic?
This is,
Right.
the county has been studying this, and
Right.
really the county has not revised regulations in terms of wastewater since like the late 70s.
But there's never been a case in Suffolk County where wastewater has ever gotten into the water system, nitrogen, from a system that's had sand under it 4 or 5 feet. It's only been in the shallow areas. These systems, I've had a license for 30 years to put them in, all right? And I've never heard of one system polluting the water, ever, because the way it works is you have a septic tank with, that has, it has an activity going on in the septic tank that's breaking down the nitrogen, okay? And the only thing that goes into the pool is water that's been cleaned.
Yes,
And it gets percolated. And there's been test after test to show that there's never been a drop of water that's ever ended up in the aquifer.
that's exactly the argument that the Long Island Builders Institute is making, and that this regulation should really be applied only in sensitive areas. That in other areas, it's really the impact is minimum considering the cost and the implications.
Yeah, I was
for
going to
the-
say,
for the
where I live
systems.
on White Street, we're very high up. I would be surprised if
Right.
septic still would create any kind of problem.
Right, but if you look at most of the village,
No.
Yeah.
it's,
Yeah.
Listen, I dig in this village every single day, excavate. That's not true. Most of this village is 20 foot to groundwater, so that's not true. Just like you tried with the sewer system, you're trying to make,
we're not trying to do anything.
no, you're making an issue out of something that doesn't exist, and you don't have the right information. And I gotta tell you that this planning commission should be abolished, because I could think of three deals in real estate right now that have died because your new implementation of these new rules. And you're making issues where they don't exist, and you're starting to hurt people's property values. If you go to the ARB, there's barely any new applications because you can't even buy a house in the village. People are afraid to buy them. So you guys are really, not all of you, but you're really starting to, hurt people's property values right now. And these lots that you're talking about are very small. They're very hard to get parking on. They are what they are. And now you're hurting regular people that didn't even know this was going on. I'm dealing with one person on Woolley Street right now. He didn't even know this happened. He can't even sell his house now because you basically made his yard sterilized. And this is what's going on, and this isn't fair. And now you're starting with something that you know nothing about, obviously, because you just said that most of the village is low, which isn't true. And this is crazy. I mean, for what?
It's
I mean,
it's
you
actually
want
not,
people to spend $15,000, $20,000 for a septic system now that you don't even know that works? The county has done this over 30 years. They've changed septic systems 3 times. They did a system of pipes, leaching pipes, that didn't work. That went on for a couple of years. They've done this over and over. No system works except the system they have. We have pure sand on Long Island. Best percolation in the world. People all over the country pray for sand when they're percolating because it's a perfect natural filter that works perfectly. And you want to change that? I mean, how are you going to do
I
that?
think you missed the beginning of the meeting.
No, I read in the paper what you guys are talking about.
I think you missed the beginning of the meeting. The goal for tonight was, this is one of the items that came up in a study a year ago. And the goal for tonight was to look into it and then understand it.
know,
And
but
think,
this
can
is
you
how
let me
everything
finish? Sorry,
starts.
can I finish? And then we would look at whether or not it makes sense to do. Nobody's made a decision,
I
but
know
this
you
is
say this
something.
every meeting, like, nobody's made a decision on zoning, we're gonna take care of this, we're only investigating, and then the trustees do a secret meeting, and then they vote it across.
I think we had about 10, I would guess, public hearings on the items that were passed. Maybe 11 public hearings. So,
Yeah, with nobody showing up, 2 people showing up, 1 person
No,
showing up.
we-
And now you're affecting every single person in this, in these small areas of the village. And now they're all getting aggravated, because now it's affecting them. And this isn't right. And this is, for such a small village to be making these crazy zoning rules and now investigating a septic system, you don't need a new septic system. And there's never been a case of pollution from one of these systems in regular sand, ever.
Because, I
You
mean,
can go to the county, ask
when you
them.
look at Lake Agawam, the quality of the
Well,
issues.
guess where the water comes from? It comes from Hill Street. It's been running down Hill Street for 100 years. I have films of it, the water, last time it rained, it was about 3 foot deep running right into the lake. And even, there's environmentalists in this town, like the ex-baykeeper, he even has information to show you.
this is not about, that's not the topic of this meeting,
Just
with all due
brought it up.
respect.
You're trying to
That's
say.
not the topic of this
pollution
meeting.
Lake Agawam and everything else is from.
That's
septic.
not the topic of this meeting.
Well, you guys, you make.
I mean,
decisions.
it's interesting information, but that's not the topic of this
Well,
meeting.
Nitrogen pollution is part of it.
Right, but the topic of this meeting was, a year ago, there was a report, and one of the items that was discussed was whether or not there were ways to incrementally improve the treatment of wastewater to avoid the type of large investment that may be needed at a later date otherwise. And we said we would look into it and see if that was something that made sense. That's what we're doing. We're looking into
What
it.
study have you ever seen that has said there's pollution or potential of pollution? The only thing that's polluting groundwater on the east
Michael, I
end.
think the
Mike-
Conservancy has been
Right.
involved with this on Long Island, and there have been some studies on Long Island that have proven that the systems that we're currently using are not adequate, especially in the high water table area.
Well, that's fine.
Yeah, I mean, I think that here,
No, they're not talking about that. They're telling me that the village is mostly low. That's what they said.
I didn't
And
say.
the other thing, ironically, what's polluting the water on the east end is farmland. Okay, that's a known fact. All right, I have a Temic filter on a house. I have a water mill and 10 other filters.
but
So for you to say that this is an issue is a little outrageous.
Well, Mike, I think I'd like to bring, why don't you take this Article 6 that was the draft of the proposed Article 6 from the Health Department, the Suffolk County Health Department, and in their declaration of policy and their statement of intent and purpose, they clearly disagree with you. They think that there is a problem and that something needs to be done. And they don't think that the septic systems that we have, that we are using presently are adequate. And that's the Suffolk County Health Department.
In low water, not in regular.
Low
Not
water.
in
Here
regular.
it says sea level rise is projected to raise groundwater levels, thus further compromise on-site
So
wastewater.
just so everyone said, because I did not say low. So there is the state publishes a map which talks about environmentally sensitive areas where they think additional treatment of wastewater is needed. Virtually the entire village is in that map. So you're welcome to look at the Studio AB report from a year ago. It has the maps in the report. So you have a perfect right to disagree with those maps, say the state was wrong when they made up those maps, that the maps are incorrect. That's fine, I understand that, but just that's the reason that the consultant who we used talked about that. And actually at the workshop meetings we had a year ago, there was a lot of interest in seeing if there was a way, again, whether there was a way to do something that would be fairly low cost, that would avoid much more expensive measures later on. It may be that these things don't work. It may be that the county is the better place to do it. But part of the role of this commission is to look at things and study them and propose to the trustees whether or not we think things need to be done.
The trustees can't make you put in a septic system. They don't have the
village-
The health department is the only one that could tell you what septic system to put in. It's been like that forever.
Okay. All right, so,
I think,
Yeah.
I mean, in
Right.
the discussion, we're really saying that the county is looking to do it, and they discourage municipalities
Right.
from doing it.
Right.
So if the county, though, if the studies that they make, they do determine that certain areas,
Right.
because the builder association is saying, let's not do it everywhere, but let's pick the areas that is needed.
right,
It's the county that will be doing it, so we're presenting this information to you. So it's not that
Right.
we're doing it to trying to force anybody to do it.
Right.
But there is a problem on Long Island in certain areas, and they're talking not only nitrogen, they're talking about pharmaceuticals and things that go, into the septic systems that will pollute the groundwater if
No, I
if it's
agree with
close.
Ross.
I also have to say, I
You
went
do
to a meeting probably maybe 2 years ago, and Nature Conservancy had it because they were concerned about the studies done on Long Island and the pollution to our groundwater.
right.
And one of the things that
Right.
shocked me more than anything was that the majority of the pollution to our groundwater was caused by cesspools.
Right.
Everyone thinks it's farm fields. It's not.
Right.
It's the cesspools. And
Right.
that, I could not, and it was a very high percentage.
Right.
I mean, very high percentage. And I was shocked by that. And
Ma-
in my mind, I thought, well, knowing that, there's going to have to be a change
How
there.
about septic?
At some
though?
point.
Is there differentiation
Yeah, there
between
is
septic and
differentiation.
cesspool?
Yeah.
Cesspools are the
Yeah.
old,
Yes.
Yeah, right.
I'd love to see one in regular groundwater. I'd love to see it. And listen, the Nature Conservancy, okay, they have,
Well, it wasn't their study.
But-
They just presented the studies that were done.
so who did them? They paid for them?
I don't know, I could find out for you.
Right.
I'm happy
I
to
mean,
find out for you. Mike.
They
Yeah,
have
but they're talking
a reason
cesspools
to
now, not
want to
septic.
preserve farmland, okay? And I lived over in
That
Watermill,
wasn't the
okay?
point.
Well, why don't you go over to Watermill and go check everybody's filters in their basements? They had to get rid of well water because they had to bring town water in because it's polluted.
Yeah, you made some very good points. But we've all come here to learn what's going on. You have a dispute with Suffolk County, and you have...
No, but-
No, let me, can I
Sure.
finish? I have permission to finish?
Sure.
Thank you, sir. You keep saying that this Article 6, is, or whatever the article is, being considered by Suffolk County is either incorrect or false, and I suggest you go to Suffolk County Health Department and make your position known, and let us get on with the meeting. You came here to learn about what's going on.
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Okay.
Can we move on to the next subject?
Okay, I have a right to talk too,
Yeah, of
okay?
course you
Because
do.
I've had things slammed down my throat
I
that
have-
have affected me
I asked
probably
you to move
more than
on.
most people in this village,
I
okay? And these meetings, nobody knows about, okay? Because there's a little piece in the paper, and nobody knows what's going on in this village, okay? And that's what's going on.
The village
Just-
does publish a calendar that lists all
Okay,
the
well,
meetings.
Once a month.
okay,
Right.
that's great. Well, usually you're the first Thursday of each month, so
But
nobody knew about
we
this.
did publish the change.
Okay, well, nobody knows that.
Okay.
And you don't have an agenda on a website or anything, so nobody knows what's going on.
Okay. So,
Well,
Right, right.
at this stage,
Right.
the Suffolk County Health Department welcomes the
Right.
LRAD program where they're meeting with work groups,
Right.
stakeholders.
Right.
And you're definitely, everybody's encouraged to get, and welcome to get involved.
right.
And the takeaway is
Right.
that this will stay under the jurisdiction of Suffolk County Health Department.
Correct. That's the real takeaway here, that this is probably not something for the village to do, that this is probably something that the county's going to take over.
Even though, the way you mentioned
Right.
before, we
Right.
are directly within the sensitive area.
Right.
So we are something, but right.
Right, so, I mean, one of the reasons we thought we should bring this up is, if the county does pass this, which I don't know if they will or not, I can't tell you, I'm not a student of the county legislature, but if they do pass it, it will definitely affect how
The village.
how the village will have to act. One of the things that concerned us was the village doesn't really have the staff to see if anyone's doing the maintenance or not. So it's not clear to us how the county's going to actually ensure that people do that, because these only work if actually someone does maintain them. And we certainly don't have the staff to go around and check that.
Well, they'll have to figure out a process.
Yeah.
I have a question for you, Mark. In this study, do they make a distinction as far as water table pollution between septics and cesspools? And so when they say that they have to put in these systems, is it mainly directed towards cesspools or also septic?
Cesspools are, well, the major cesspools when they are past a certain capacity are illegal according to the EPA regulations, the federal regulations. You must replace cesspools. And cesspools are not allowed in the county.
Right.
So
But is this Article 6 directed mainly towards the cesspools that exist, or also?
it's for new construction and any major alteration.
Yeah,
A
but
major alteration includes addition of bedrooms.
But you are correct, it would require that if you had new construction on a site that already had a cesspool, you could not reuse the
No,
cesspool.
no, but here it provides that if you have a use, because prior to 1981, there was a slightly higher density. So you will be able to be grandfathered on the amount of gallons per day that you're allowed, that you were allowed prior to 1981, that you still need to use an enhanced system to treat it. But it's not meant to modify what's called Article 9, which is the density requirement. I mean, it specifically says that the use of enhanced treatment system will not increase the density.
If you have a septic system, again, I don't know if they consider the septic system bad enough to have to be replaced, but if you have a septic system, is this something that can be added to the septic system, or you have to replace everything?
So right now, the ones that are provisionally approved are new systems that have to be.
So you have to take the septic out.
But there's a group, including local precast manufacturers, that are coming up with a system that will fit in the existing tanks.
Oh, okay, so that's possible.
Yes,
So that will reduce the cost.
Yes, that will reduce. So you would be, if somebody has a 4-bedroom system and they want to add a 5th bedroom, then instead of having to replace it completely, maybe you can just add to the system.
Charlie?
Yeah.
Michael, thanks for keeping the conversation lively. As usual, you don't disappoint. Clearly, no. No, it's good to hear you, actually. I just wanted to ask a couple of things and mention a couple of things. First off, these guys were commissioned by the Board of Trustees, amongst other things, to look into this. And I remember almost 10 years ago going to different symposiums and events up in Stony Brook. Actually, the mayor and I did. Because it's understood there is an issue with runoff water, different sources, and you pointed out there are many different sources of it. But be that as it may, septic systems and aging and failing cesspool septic systems are a contributor. I think in some parts of the island, I think that's unequivocal. So, well, this group and others have been commissioned to, okay, how do we go ahead with that? We did present, we were looking into as a village a septic system for the business district. Very costly. A lot of feedback came back from that as being a costly event, and I think the numbers even came back more than what we anticipated. Right. So that's why I haven't heard a lot about that lately. But a lot of also, when we were talking about that a year ago, a lot of things that have changed or progressed in that, since then, in a year. That is, the Suffolk County taking volunteers to do these test sites and systems. And when you say 4 now, have they've approved?
Yes.
Conditionally, okay, under probation, which is big. Because again, having the county has always been behind the system. There have been people who've been wanting to put in new systems, developers and builders and such, in new construction, that haven't been able to, only because the county hadn't approved it. So the fact that the county now, Suffolk County Department of Health has now got up to speed is a plus. Another thing that transpired, I guess in the past year, on the state level, Fred Thiel, Assemblyman Fred Thiel and Senator Ken LaValle brought up to the state. First of all, CPF funding expired last year, 2 years ago, I think it was, so they renewed that the funding for the CPF through out in the East End here. And so they did get extended. And with that, they added a change to that where the CPF funds could be used for water preservation or water improvement, which is a big thing too, because, and that's what basically that gets me to the question, are you familiar with what East Hampton Town, which kind of touches a little bit what you're talking about, Michael, about mandating and so forth. But one of the biggest problems we found was the cost of the systems. An average new system is about $5,000 to $10,000, and it's double that. So I think that the CPF money now allows, and HTM Town is looking into putting a resolution up in a public hearing to make it part of their town-wide system and using CPF money. This is all an investigative phase, but it's a good method that it gets you to upgrade the systems, and they're going to use CPF, or they're proposing to use the CPF money, which has been cleared from the state, to pay for the cost, or to somehow pay for a portion of installing these new systems. So what these guys have found out, that antiquated systems aren't good, and there are some parts in the village here that are impacted, not all. But we got to be ahead of it. And the things that have deterred us have been the county being slow in their technology embracing. Well, they finally came around, so that's one obstacle down. 2 is the cost, huge amount of cost on a residential and or larger scale. Now that we can, or now it's allowed to investigate using CPF funding for any type of water preservation or water improvement, now they can defray the cost of installing these systems. And I think East Hampton was talking to the tune of using $15,000 system, which can almost defray all or certainly a large portion of it. So I think that covers the cost part of it, which is big for the residential level. And now I ask you guys, I'm curious, because we have talked about, because of where the level of the business district is, could these systems, or address that to you, Mark, you're more the engineer, could they be used on an individual basis, like in a business district?
Right, so actually...
Converted from residential to an individual
right,
business.
So the commercial, they are looking into revising the commercial standards and coming up with those systems. And in the commercial application, they will allow to have those systems used by multiple businesses. So they will, there will be like, very much applies to our situation, where, for example, near Job's Lane, where the village has a parking area that could, where a mini treatment system could be installed that would be able to service multiple businesses. So a mini sewer district would still have to be created, such that the Department of Public, the DPW would still be involved in monitoring the system, but this is definitely an alternative, a real alternative to the sewering, to the complete sewering of the system.
And that's what I thought. It'd be almost like a spot system that
yes, various,
on a very concentrated, like that scenario, a couple of stores, of which those stores, if interested, would then perhaps defray the largest cost, because the biggest part was, I believe you brought up as well, Oris, was about the taxpayers are going to pay, for this very expensive. And the sewer districting hasn't been brought up in a while, because it is a very costly undertaking, and it's out there.
But those systems would be much, the cost of those systems for, let's say, 5 or 10 businesses would not have no comparison, much lower than the sewer system.
So, and again, I know, and you can, but that's all I just wanted to say. I really wanted to answer your stuff about where nobody's ramming anybody down, because 3 of us are on the board here, and so I'm speaking for at least myself, that they were commissioned to look into. 10 years ago, it's been identified as a state level, because Cuomo signed off on stuff, the Assembly, the State Senate, the county and towns have identified it's an issue. So we're not individually looking to make your life more difficult.
Well, I
mean, that's my opinion.
I went before you guys a year and a half ago, and I said to the mayor, I said, why don't you get CPF funds to chip in for the sewer?
The answer is we couldn't. Now we can, because it wasn't. Well, never. See, I never like to use the word never or always. You used that several times today, so let's stay away from that. But here's the answer to that. The never is no longer the answer to that. Under the old guidelines, CPF funding was not allowed to use that. It came up because CPF had a expiration date, so it had to go back to the state assembly and senate and the governor to extend the life of the CPF, the collection of the 2% from the real estate transfer. So that got extended, and with that, they added
Well, that's
that
what-
now this can be used for water. Now, quite honestly, whether the sewering or something really fits into that parameter, I don't know the answer to that. But I do know that's being looked into currently at East Hampton Town, and we'll look into that as well. That's kind of what I'm asking these guys, because that just took that never
Well,
out of that.
when I went before you guys, it was coming up for a vote a year later, and I said, why doesn't somebody lobby? Because this village doesn't get a.
The answer is we
fraction.
did it. My point is we did. And the answer, it's done.
Yeah.
So your question, the answer to your prayer is it got lobbied. We did lobby. Our state senator and our state assemblyman and the governor signed off. Now CPF money can be applied to that. So there's the good news. And the other part, yes, from an individual selfish point of view of this being a village representative with the two other members here, we do contribute the lion's share of CPF money. So it does give us a little more, in my opinion, a lobbying stance to use it for what we're looking here. So I don't think anything these guys are presenting is a waste of my time or your time or anybody's time.
Well, I think the question is, if they were going to do a sewer system, and they can get a big, if they ever go back to the sewer, and they can get the CPF money to pay the bond, then it would be worth doing a sewer.
Absolutely.
No, but
I
Yeah,
just said
but
that.
I just, it's an interesting thought.
But if that,
Yeah,
but I don't
so,
think,
yeah.
I think that'd be a large money. I think the first step is we do try these spot systems. Again, this is all up for debate. But the good news is the two biggest hurdles have been the county didn't have any approved systems, and there's this new technology. Now they do. And before, funding was cost prohibitive for these systems. That has now been taken care of through CPF, which you brought up.
Yes, so the county, when we had our hearings about the potential for a sewer system in the central business district, at that time, as was just stated, the county only really was allowing these consolidated sewers to go ahead. And they are very, very expensive to do. The cost we got back was pointed out was even higher than the original
Almost three times the original
estimate.
cost.
And there was a lot of concern we heard about, I would say both the cost, but also whether or not it was in effect yesterday's technology. What's happened since then, which is very helpful, is the county is finally, and we heard a lot at those hearings, a lot of people came to those hearings and said, this is not the right thing to do. The county's going to soon allow these individual sewer things to be done, and you really should be waiting for that. And, we decided at the time that we shouldn't move ahead, that it was not right to move ahead at the time, that we needed to do more study. And I think, as has been said, if these start to get approved, and that may be a way that we can address the issues in the central business district without burdening the taxpayers with an enormous bill, which clearly we heard there was a lot of apprehension about.
But I think also it's also, I think, more appropriate. Those spot systems are more appropriate. We're not going to have apartment buildings. We're not going to have major, so, what sewage treatment plants are made for. So those spot systems is better. It's I think a smarter technology to use. And when fairness, when we started the process 2 years ago, health department had not even reviewed or looked into those alternate systems. That were not approved. Or not even,
They won't even look at them.
If we're going to look at this, though, I think maybe we want to review what we saw 2 years ago, because there was one proposal that was a very cost-effective. There was a fraction of the cost of the centralized sewers with the vacuum and whatnot. Who, at least he claimed, it was functional and basically was on gravity. He didn't have any equipment or anything, and you recall he was one of them.
so Lombardi.
Lombardi, that's right.
Was that one of the ones that was, I don't think
Yeah,
that's one of the
Lombardi.
ones that the county approved.
No, this one has not been yet approved by
Really?
by the
Yeah,
county.
yeah.
It's not has not been approved.
You say East Hampton, East Hampton Village or East Hampton Town?
Town. East Hampton Town's looking into it.
So it would be a town program.
What they're looking to do currently.
Yeah, and not,
I was just wondering, it seems to me that I read that Southampton Town is doing some sort of a program where they're subsidizing.
Right. So the county.
How is that?
Right. So the county, as part of their reaching out the towns and the stakeholders groups, they are meeting with the town to try to come up with programs
So there's a tax rebate or something?
Right, so
to
they are
subsidize?
looking to,
And how would the village be, I mean, in a sense, village residents are also town residents. Would
Right.
the village be able to,
we could ask to be part of that discussion with the county. I don't believe we are. I think that I know they are talking to the town, they're talking to Brookhaven, they're talking to...
well, I would think, people accept the fact that their electrical system has to be upgraded, and if you apply for a building permit, I think you have to be inspected.
Right,
Right.
right.
And that would be through the town, I believe, isn't it?
Yes.
So it would almost be a
Right.
parallel
Right.
situation in some ways going forward.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah, I think we should, I would encourage us to become involved
Right, right.
in discussion with the county.
Right. And so just to repeat, there's no thought tonight that this is anything we should be doing right now, something we think we should be studying. And we really want to understand it because the thought is that this may avoid much higher expenditures for everyone in the future, which is really what we're trying to do. Is to try to avoid what we've seen the circumstances other villages have ended up with.
See, here, for example, if somebody's going to add a pool house with maybe a little bathroom to their home, according to the proposed Article 6, they will have to use those enhanced systems. Any change of use, any enlargement of the system, they will have to use them. And is this a good thing? Is this a bad thing? We encourage everybody to be involved in that.
But depending on the area though, again, depending on,
No,
because right now it's area, but
Everywhere.
that's still under discussion though.
right now, it's still, what the county is proposing is that you add a pool house, you add a bathroom to your pool house, you have to...
I made direct a question to Michael. Michael, why would you be against these enhanced systems if they can improve in the long run?
Because I've seen the county let different systems go through, and 2 years later, they say they don't work, and then you can't use them anymore. I've seen them do it with septic fields. I've seen them do it with a type of, I think it was forget what it's called, chronograph, glass that they were going to let you use, and they weren't letting you use. They've gone through a lot of stuff, and it's questionable where the county even gets these systems from. There's systems that work all over the country, and for some reason, they end up with these cockamamie systems that they come up with that, they must be like somebody's uncle made it or something that knows at the county because they don't work, and then they send them back, and you can't use them anymore. And they've always stuck to this septic system with cesspools. They always keep going back to that. And unfortunately, that doesn't work on the ocean, it doesn't work on the bay. Because it goes right in the groundwater. And if they had a great system, that would be great. But it seems like the only thing that's acceptable in low water areas on the East Coast is a sewage system. Having a regular sewer system. You go basically anywhere on the East Coast. A lot of places have sewer systems on the coast. They don't use septic systems because they don't. You might as well just flush your toilet right into the ocean if you live on Gin Lane. I mean, that's where it's going. And, down on Dune Road in West Hampton where the washout is, they don't even have to conform to Suffolk County standards because there was a lawsuit there. So over there, they put their septic system in the water and they bury it with sand. So when you flush your toilet, it goes right in the ocean. And they should just run a pipe out in there. They'd save a lot of money because that's what they're doing. And, I think they should investigate putting some kind of sewer system, small sewer systems, and, make people in Gin Lane pay for it, or Meadow Lane pay for it, because it's not right what's going on. And, the areas over here, a regular cesspool system, I'm sure is fine, but the waterfront, that's what's polluting the waters.
I think that, although you're making some good points, I think that you should really learn or try to read up, and I'll be happy to send you information about those enhanced systems. And I disagree with you. I think the people on Gin Lane or on Dune Road should be mandated to use these type of systems. And I don't think there should be a sewer. Because I think sewers create a lot of other types of issues. A lot of that are...
Such as?
Well, first of all, the maintenance of those sewer systems and then also the way they have to truck all the waste and the way they, I think it's not necessarily appropriate
I have a question
for
that-
residential application.
That's parallel to what Mike was saying, that is even these enhanced systems, if you're so close to the ocean and to the groundwater, I mean, do they still work?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Those systems will work underwater.
Oh,
They can
really?
they can be complete systems. They can be sealed. They work underwater. These are the systems that are used on boats, for example. Or used on,
Where does the effluent go already?
no, the effluent is treated to a level.
Yeah, but how
That-
does it go out then if it's sealed?
It goes out. When I say sealed, you know,
All right.
eventually it goes out.
What you're
It
talking
goes out to a
about-
leaching field. It goes out to a
Yeah.
leaching field, but it's essentially used on boats. Essentially used.
And in taking what Mike was saying, these systems that they're approving right now, is it the guy's uncle? Or are
No,
they
no, they're like major.
actually systems that throughout the country have been
No, it's throughout the
looked at?
world. They're like major corporations.
Right.
They are systems that are owned by like major corporations, and it's a problem that it's not, you know, the world population being what it is. You know, I remember when I was born it was maybe 3-4 billion. Now it's like 20 billion. You know, this is a problem
You're
that's
familiar with these systems?
yeah that's faced all over the world. That's
And
faced
many
all over the world.
states actually have these.
Yes.
Okay, so it's
Yeah.
not just something.
Yeah, no, no, no.
and
Suffolk
I-
County has been, I would say,
Extremely slow.
that's kind. Yes, Suffolk County has been very slow to embrace any alternate to just a sewer. There's like a, you know, and part of the problem is, you know, without casting, you know, I don't mean this in a bad way, you know, there's a whole industry built around sewers. So there's a lot of reasons why people like to build sewers. There's a lot of money being made on sewers.
Yeah.
So it's been very hard to break that and look at options because there's people make a lot of money on sewers don't necessarily want you to look at options because they're going to make all this money.
They don't know how to do it either.
Right, and they don't know how to do it. It's also different skills. So the county's been very slow to really embrace alternates, where other states have been doing this for decades, really. We're really behind. If you go to the West Coast,
It's like
I
trying to
mean,
get radiant heat, nobody gives it.
Yes,
I
yeah.
get it, but nobody has it.
Upstate, they got it.
yeah, upstate, right, upstate
It's a
it's
Long
very
Island
common.
thing, it really is just a Long Island.
Right, so it's a Long Island, we've been very slow, and Suffolk County's been much slower than Nassau County,
Long Island is sewage.
for whatever reason, so.
I was troubled by the comment that Southampton Town is entertaining, negotiating, or whatever in this area. And I look at the fact that Southampton Town, is part of your mandate to get involved in this negotiation or this event that Southampton Town is doing? And my concern is, taking a very partisan view, there are 53,000 real estate parcels in the town of Southampton, of which Southampton Village is an incorporated village in the town of Southampton, and we have 3,400 real estate parcels. We represent more than 21% of the assessed value. When you look at CPF, and we're talking about using CPF funds,
Right.
you look at the CPF, we have never gotten a fair, in my view anyhow, a fair review. You go to East Hampton, they said, screw you. East Hampton Village has a contract with East Hampton Town specifically stating what amounts of money from the CPF program is going to be spent in East Hampton Village. And here we have Southampton Town negotiating once again. We've asked them if they would be willing to split the CPF funds equitably, and there's no issue, they won't talk about it.
Right.
Now we're talking about them using CPF funds for some plan for sewage, and we're not part of it.
Right, no, I agree with you. That I think that we should be part of this.
They like our money, but they don't seem to want to give it back to us.
All right. I think the trustees have to address
Understand what
this
you're
issue.
saying. Why would we not participate if the CPF has a problem to treat with sewage problems? Why would the village of Southampton be on the outside looking in?
In the following manner. The board of the CPF and control of the CPF is under the control of Southampton Town.
Yeah.
The CPF has been around for 20 or 30 years, and I believe Southampton Village has been shortchanged in a very material way.
They have,
Yes.
no
And
question.
And towns look at us and say, huh, so what? Tough darts.
Well,
Well, And there is no mechanism that I know of to force the town to treat us fairly on this question. They control the CPF, they collect it, they bill us for the administration of the CPF, and I'm not sure that unless we get involved at this time, to make sure that we just aren't left out in the cold yet.
Well, who was it, Rich? Was it you that was saying that the state has changed the rules so that CPFs in general can now use those monies for sewage issues?
Yeah, well,
Is that what you're
water,
saying?
yeah, because CPF was owned for, like, the old uses were like park and
Right, reservation land.
So then they added, when they renewed to extend the CPF collection of funds, they added, okay, this water, because no, water is an issue. Now, I'm not sure how broad that is, but East Hampton Town, currently, and that's why I refer to East Hampton Town, because they're looking into study using their CPF funds to subsidize it. And that's why I said, okay, if they're doing it, then we need to get on board with Southampton Town, because you're right, perhaps. But even if it's not through the CPF fund, because that's what's recently been added to, but as Deborah pointed out, then you also, but the town is also looking into with rebate system. But where are they getting that money from, I don't know. So there's a couple ways East Hampton Town is currently attacking it, or looking to attack it in the way of CPF. And Southampton Town is currently looking at some type of tax rebate. But where they're getting that from, that's a good question.
So
No.
East Hampton Town has a contract with East Hampton Village,
That's a good thing.
and it delineates, I have a
Yeah.
copy of it, it delineates the fact that a certain percentage of the funds come from East Hampton Village into the unit that is controlled by Southampton Town, and it states that those funds will be used in East Hampton Village. When you talk to East Hampton Town, they think, they say, well, you're a Mandarin, they don't understand fairness and equitability on this issue.
I mean, Southampton.
Which begs the question is, even if they do allocate CPF funds to these other uses, how is it going to be allocated, and are we going to see a penny of it? I think the trustees need to.
No, you're right, absolutely. I mean,
But at least if it's legal to do, you can now chase it, you know?
Yes.
Now, but as Michael pointed out, that's now can be taxed.
How is the money handed over to the town from who collects the money
The CPF
directly?
is
Yes.
collected
Yeah.
at the time of the closing of a home,
Write a check.
there's a 2% tax. That money goes directly to the CPF fund, which is managed in Hampton Bays and
Oh, so it
controlled
can't
by
be.
the board of the town of Southampton. Village has no voice in it.
So the village can't hold it back?
No.
Can't,
We do have a voice on it, we do have members on the board.
Right.
But I know what you're saying, but there's.
But the issue,
One member on the board, one member on the
And they still
board.
have to follow the rules.
The
You're saying
issue,
the rules have changed, they
Yes.
just say,
You're right.
I mean, if it was
And you know
not
what, we don't
possible
really know
before, then...
what's coming yet, because
Right,
basically, it may be used in high water table areas.
right.
That they may give a portion of what it's
Right.
going to cost to change those septics to the newer septics. You know, I mean, we don't know how it's going to be structured yet. But I will say this, if in fact it is structured in such a way, we're going to go after it. We're a village, we're going to go after it.
We
have a right
haven't
to.
for the last 20 or 30
No, but-
years.
Yeah, We
But-
put in 28,
There's
you
a
made
way
me,
to do it.
I've got the,
Right.
anyhow, we contribute something like 28% of CPF funds in the town of
Right.
Southampton, and I think we get back something around 11 or so, and
How
it's
do you-
amazing to see,
How did you get that information?
well, you put me onto it, and Steve Funkin, he can run it up, he's run it up for me several times.
Well, I always thought
And
it
it's
was very
astonishing
interesting.
who does get it.
Right.
I always thought it was very interesting on where the CPF funds go, because who's ever the supervisor at the time and wherever they live, that seems to be the direction that the funds go.
But obviously,
We need an agreement with them, like.
one of the
Hampton
issues,
did.
one of the issues we have in Southampton, so in East Hampton Village is a significant percentage of the population of that town. So that's a different political circumstance than in Southampton, with the majority of the population, as opposed to the real estate value, is west of the canal. And just by accident, the majority of CPF funds up to date have actually been used west of the canal.
Right.
So, if you go to towns like West Hampton and Quogue and East Quogue, Hampton Bays, enormous tracts of land have been preserved through CPF fund. That's not a bad thing, but that's been the political problem, if you will, has been we're not a significant enough piece of the voting base for the town to be encouraged to use. But however, this is really a different issue, because once you start looking at issues of clean water, That's a problem that's much more severe, obviously, in the towns along the ocean than it is in towns to the north. So, you know, in fairness, one would think if CPF funds are going to be available for these uses, it should be places like Southampton Village where the town would want it to be spent, because it's going to have most impact. Yes?
On Monday night, I sat through a trustees meeting in the village of Patchogue. And I think this village should think about hiring a lobbyist type of person that could go to the CPF, that could go to the state. There's $7 million sitting at the state now for a grant for sewage systems. And I watched that trustee board, they're like piranhas. And they found out about that, and right away they're like, get that $7 million, we're extending our sewer. And they get so much money from the state. They have somebody working there that gets these grants, that finds out. I mean, we don't do anything here. We don't even have a person that knows how to do that.
Actually, yes, we do. Absolutely
we have a
do.
grant writer, and she has received a lot of funds. And incidentally,
Well, she's missing.
if we went ahead with the sewer district, that was part of the budgeting, how we were going to get grants for it. So
Yeah, but you guys spent money out of the budget to investigate a sewer. You didn't have to do that. I watched this.
But actually, it was funded, it was funded
You
by
should
the
really
county.
come to a village meeting there. You'd be amazed what they do. They are incredible what they did with that village. They have lobbyists, they have people that go after grants. They have a whole team there. That whole town has been rebuilt. And, you know, and there's nobody lobbying over at the CPF. They should hire one person full-time to keep going to the town, trying to get money from CPF, going to the state, getting money. Because that's where the problem is here. I mean, we totally get screwed. I said that for 2 years. We're wasting...
You know what? You need to go into Village Hall and you need to ask Steve. He will give you a list of all of the grant money we have received in the last 10 years.
Well,
I think you'll be shocked.
Yeah, but that's not the issue. You're getting no CPF money.
That's not true. We do get some.
What, you got $5 million
We've
for a
gotten
piece of
some.
land
I
that
just bought the parcel on Moses Lane for $11 million.
Right.
All right, well, you're getting, but what good is that doing you? I
We're
mean,
gonna, wait a minute here.
There aren't many
You said we're not
parcels, you know.
getting it. We're getting it.
you've collected enough money to do the sewer for free here. I mean, you could have did the whole sewer system here and didn't have...
Look, we have
for office too.
We have a piece next to 7-Eleven. We have a piece at the O'Connell parking lot. We just bought the piece there. We have purchased, Community Preservation purchased several
I know, but you're
properties on Meadow Lane that were environmentally sensitive. There's a list that they've, it's not enough, okay?
Right.
But we have gotten money from them.
And-
And you know what? Our costs are very high here. $11 million for that, and then, you know, we had $3.5 million behind the O'Connell parking lot. Our costs are higher here because our values are higher.
Yeah, and when we looked at, so, and let me, and let me just add, when we looked at the sewer, the issue with the sewer was actually, and it's the same in Patchogue, by the way, we would have been eligible for a significant amount of money from the state. In fact, 7 mil was the amount that was discussed with the state. The problem was that there was another 51 mil that had to be paid for. And Patchogue's no different than that. What the real answer in Patchogue, and that's a decision they made that I would argue did very well for that town. They decided to tax themselves to pay for a sewer because the village was very depressed, and there was a strong belief in Patchogue that putting a sewer would help, and in fact it did. And if you go through the numbers with them, the state has paid a nice percentage of those costs, but the vast majority of the cost of the sewer in Patchogue has been paid by the taxpayers. That's a fact.
And they also increased.
That is a fact.
Those buildings they built, those 5-story buildings, those guys, the developers contributed a lot of money.
They're taxpayers as far as I know.
No, in fees to get those buildings.
But those are taxpayers.
They got, no, in fees.
Mr. White, with all due respect, those are taxpayers, whether you call them fees or taxes or whatever, those are taxpayers paying for a sewer system. When we had our hearings a year and a half ago, we got a very strong reaction from owners in the Central Business
They did not wanna pay.
District that they would not prepared to pay for it. That's why we've been looking at
Because
options.
you didn't give them extra zoning like they
Right,
did.
well, the
Right.
that
So
shows
you're
exactly.
not
They
telling the
raised
whole story. There's a reason why you use a sewer system. I mean, listen, you're laughing, but you don't want to tell. The way they did it was, they gave people credit to
Correct.
build larger buildings.
Correct.
Okay?
Yeah, no, I agree with you. You're absolutely right,
so
but
then it's
no
my-
one here wanted to do that.
And they
Right,
paid
so
for
it's
their
Michael-
sewer.
so it's Michael, so in order-
The turnaround situation was, come on, you can't even compare it, Michael. It's two different. Well, I'm telling you how it was
Well, I
done.
know how
Yeah,
it was
but
done,
we-
but that's
but
why
we
it
don't want
worked,
that
because
here.
they needed it.
Yeah.
They had to reverse the trend.
If you don't want it done, why did you have them go through all these studies? Why did you spend $30,000 to do a study?
You just said, you
Mostly
just
county
talked about
money.
that multi-story building.
He came here to be confrontational, and that's all.
That's
But
what-
that's how they did it.
Talking circles.
That's how they paid for it.
Anyway,
One more
yes,
thing.
yeah.
We didn't want that to happen.
We didn't want
With
that
this
to happen.
Community Preservation Fund, and we do contribute roughly 28% of it, and we don't get a fraction of that back. Now, I would even think that the situation is worsening because the amount of land that they can buy in this village, in the Moses Lane parcel, there are so few left, the ones that they bought
Exactly.
by
There's not even a lot of
across
hard
from the
parts.
pond and that,
Right.
and all that sort of thing. So we're actually getting into a position where we're going to continue to generate, every time a house sells, we generate a huge amount of money for them, but there's very little left to do, and it would seem to me that if the Community Preservation Fund can now allocate money towards sewage problems, that we ought to go as a group and before the town and tell them, hey, don't buy anything more. I can't think of a parcel left in the land that I'd get all that enthused if they did buy, you know? Whereas this sewage thing is a big deal.
You're absolutely right. And that's, because again, there's just limited opportunities in the village to utilize the funds. That's why
The
you should
opportunities
play
have
that.
diminished, and yet the money that we're throwing off,
But if we don't make a serious effort,
Right.
we find out at a meeting, I didn't know that there was a plan or an undertaking by the town. If the village doesn't get involved right now and say, we want a piece of what we have put into the fund, and not only do we want it from this point going forward, we want to go back 10 years and collect some of the funds we should have been collecting. East Hampton Town has granted, contract to East Hampton Village that they will collect specific amounts of the funds.
That's an interesting.
It's part of the contract. Does Southampton Village have any undertaking with the town or
we should
CPF?
do just that.
No, that's a good point.
Right,
I think
right,
I can use that.
right.
What about getting Southampton Town out of Southampton Village? Where is Southampton Town's centerpiece? Where are they? Where is the town? They
Here,
don't have one.
oh, it's here. So
Oh,
we're
well,
being-
it's a Southampton Village.
But Southampton Town encompasses other
What do
hamlets.
they
I mean,
mean for us?
No?
They don't pay taxes. They provide all this nitrogen in their waste and sewers do we have to pay for, and the parking.
Right.
All right, they were a little off track.
Yeah, so,
Let's get back to
Just to
Yes,
Yeah, what's
correct,
this meeting supposed to be about?
right, so what this meeting is about, but I think it's actually been a very helpful conversation, is,
I just want to
you know,
correct,
we had looked a year ago at whether or not we should require enhanced tree treatment for new construction in the residential zones. As we've heard, the county really is looking at this and has not been encouraging the villages to do that. They would rather have more control over it. I think the other part of it, which is really, I think, came up tonight, which is particularly important in terms of the residential zone, where the costs are really a very significant factor, is if, in fact, we could work with the town to help pay for the use of these systems in the residential districts, that would be really helpful. That's somewhat honestly outside of the purpose of the planning commission, but if we can help make that happen, that would be, I think, very helpful. Yeah, yeah, and I would say we are going to be looking again at the central business district, because the issues have not gone away in the central business district, and when we do come back this summer to look again at the central business district, I think we really want to look at whether there's alternatives that would allow individual owners to band together to solve some of the issues that we know, and as opposed to what these sort of centralized system we were looking at two
You know, one
years
of the
ago.
big issues you're gonna have is, I own a store that sells hats.
Right,
And the place next to
Right.
me is a 80-seat restaurant.
Right.
It runs, and you're gonna come to me and say, well, you sell hats, you're gonna pay a portion of the fee, and I'm gonna say, hey, wait a minute, you know, I have one toilet, one sink, and it doesn't overflow. This guy's got a 80-seat restaurant and bar and so
Right.
forth. You're gonna have enormous problems trying to allocate within that district who pays for what.
right, and that was the issue that we heard loud and clear a year and a half ago. I think the one thing that some other villages have looked at, which I think is an interesting approach, is rather than making it a requirement, make it an incentive. And see if you can, in effect, find things that basically make it an incentive for someone to do it, rather than make it something that they consider a burden. So for the owner, as opposed to the storekeeper, for the owner, there may be things we could do that would make an incentive for the owner to in fact do it.
But there is,
Right.
in this case, there is what's called, typically there is
Right.
what's called the benefit assessment.
Right, right.
Such that the person who owns the store that has hat now has to pay for the benefit to be able to lease it to maybe a hair salon, or lease it to
Right.
an ice cream parlor
Right.
later. So that benefit normally gets assessed.
Right. I mean, one of the issues in the village right now is you really can't open a restaurant in a location that didn't already have one. So that is one of the things that perhaps with the county, if we can figure out a way to basically allow people to do that once they put in these alternate sort of system, I think for a lot of property owners that would be an incentive. They would say, gee, that's really worth doing.
Do you have any feeling, any fix at all in the value of a wet use as compared to a non-wet use?
Well, I think, interestingly, I would put it in a broader sense. In my other life, I do have a life outside of the planning commission, amazingly enough. As some others at the table, I'm involved in retail real estate and at a national level, and I think we're beginning to see it in the village. The number of apparel retailers is shrinking, and that's probably going to continue over the next few years. And so if you think of the village and what you can fill those stores with, I think the importance of wet uses, which is a very helpful term, is going to really be very important in the future if we're going to be able to continue to fill our retail space. And that's a major issue in this village right now. You really can't do that
Also,
in most of the village.
I mean, we have a minimum of 800 square feet.
Right.
And I've always said, if
Right.
we could reduce that
Right,
and give several smaller stores, you have an entry level
right,
that people will be able to afford.
right.
And they can start their business and maybe grow their business from a small square footage to a larger square footage because they can afford to do that. But you need 2 bathrooms then.
Right,
You're
right.
not going to get it unless you do something like this.
Right, so that, the county
you have
health
more
department has
variety.
made it virtually impossible to open a restaurant in the village.
And you have more variety,
It's another problem.
and variety
Right,
coupled with more restaurants
Right.
makes a vibrant business district.
and the other thing we know is to attract a younger resident, which I think is very critical to the future of this village. The population of this village is aging. To get a younger resident, you really need to have more activity at night. And one of the things that you get at night that encourages people to go out at night is if you have a place to go to eat. So I think it's very important for the future of this village that we be able to have these wet uses. And that's an incentive. I mean, I think what's attractive about that is rather than being a property owner and the feeling they're being burdened, that gives them an incentive. And I think one thing we heard at those hearings is there was not a lot of appetite for paying more taxes. Is that a fair statement?
I think there are a lot of business property owners with proper incentives.
Right.
As you just said, Paul,
Right.
the long-term viability, not
Right.
currently, but the long-term viability
Right.
of the entire region hinges, as Michael pointed out, that's
Right.
why Patchogue,
Right.
I remember what it used to look like.
Yep,
as,
yep,
what
yep.
we all will look
Yep.
like now. It is a model, but
Right.
also they were just in a completely different direction.
Right, right.
But the quick turnaround and the success is incredible.
Right,
But other areas could turn into that
right.
if they don't think ahead. And that's where I think that's
Right.
the viability of the business
Right.
district.
Paul and I were both at a conference
Right.
earlier in the week, the International Council of Shopping Centers, for our other lives.
Right.
But this is a national trend. All the national brands are shrinking because of Amazon.
Yeah.
You don't know this, but it's happening quickly and in real time.
You're
So
absolutely right.
it's going to hit, it's already obviously.
I've always used Sag Harbor as a prime example, good,
Right.
bad, or indifferent, but why is that a vibrant community? Because there's a restaurant or a bar every 2 steps.
Right.
There's people there. It attracts people to go to it, to dine and go home. Apartments upstairs for where they're already appropriate,
Right, and one of the problems in this village is
And that's
what,
because they have
And they have
sewer
sewer
districts, that's why.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
always
Right,
been the
but
argument.
I think that if we go,
Why would taxes go up if we have
but if we
CPF?
do, if we,
Well, no, we haven't placed the subsidies.
so if we study the possibility to use those small systems for, and be able to allow wet uses, maybe it's into, I'd say right away, at least 3 parking lots. We are Fellingham, Hayes, on Joe's Lane, and here in the back, 3 areas where we could put those systems that could then allow the businesses on those properties to
Can
have
you
wet
put the
use.
system just in an individual property, just behind?
No, those systems will be behind in the public
But
parking
can it
lot.
just be individual to that property?
Well, they're talking about
On Main
sharing.
Street?
it can be, although there's a lot of efficiencies to sharing.
Yeah, for commercial, exactly.
Right.
But in
Tremendous.
terms of the timing, the one owner may be ready to change the use.
Right, right.
Yeah,
And the
you
other
can
one
do it.
doesn't want to.
Yeah.
So could that one person go ahead and?
Yeah.
But he gets the benefit, he has the ability to change the use.
But the answer is yes, you could, but
Right.
it might not be
As cost
practical.
effective, yeah.
It's cost effective, but yes, I think the answer is yes, you could.
Right.
Mark, are you saying that these systems are big enough that 5 stores could hook up to one?
Yes, 5 to 10
system and so on,
stores.
or-
You know,
or in Job's Lane?
Absolutely.
Right.
Those systems are what they use, for example, in Switzerland, they do not allow septic systems. In Switzerland, every 20 houses, 15 houses are all connected to this type of system. They do not allow septic systems. And I think these are like proven systems. And it's a technology that Suffolk County had not looked at. And I think it's a great technology. And I think the way our structure, the way we are configured, lends itself very much to the use of the system.
So Mark, is the system that would be used for a house pretty much the same system you'd use for a restaurant?
You know, it's a similar system, but it's like a bigger,
It's the same thing, but larger.
it's a larger.
8 cylinders?
Right, exactly. But it has, and you would, but under our regulations, a mini sewer district would have to be created for the maintenance.
Right, right. I mean, if we do this as a business district, there are things you need to do because you're going to may need to make sure that these are being maintained.
Right.
Because otherwise, it's going to go back into the water table, which is, to get the county to allow these things to open in the village business district, I think I'm sure they're going to require that we ensure that those are treated so that they never goes back
It
into
could be a
the
permit
water.
system,
Right,
where they get a permit every year.
right, right.
And then we know that they've done
Right.
what they need to
Right,
do.
right. So that's something I think this summer we're going to go back to because, well, we heard loud and clear. I think we do try to listen. When the sewer was discussed, there was not a lot of support among the taxpayers for undertaking that cost. We stepped back and said, let's wait. And I think sometimes waiting's a good thing. And if we can now come up with an option that is less capital intensive, the need has not changed. I mean, and I think we're going to see, I think you see it already, we're going to see it's going to be more and more difficult to do what landlords in this village have traditionally done, which is assume that national brands will pay a lot of money to be here in the summer, whether or not it makes business sense to do. When national brands were making very big margins, that made sense. When national brands don't get those margins, that's going to be much more difficult to accomplish in the future, I think. So,
All right?
I'd look to meeting at 7:30.
Is there another meeting after?
Yes.
But you're an hour early.
You're an hour early?
No, I was coming.
Or you're an hour late for this one?
I wanted to see the project on Down East Lane, if someone can show it.
7:30.
Because I didn't get it in the mail.
Okay. So, any other comments? I think one thing we'll do, just in relation to some of the comments here, we will put this on the village website so people can see it, Article 6 from the county. And I think also, I want to make sure, I believe that the Studio AB study is on the village website, but we'll make sure, so that people can see what was behind this and some of the maps that were researched during that process, to make sure that people can see those also.
Will you undertake some effort to deal with the town's inquiry into this subject and use of CPF funds so the village gets...
I think that's the
We'll
trustees.
do it.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Absolutely. We got your back, Horace.
Yeah, the FEMA maps are in the reports. I'll make sure those are on the website.
I have one more question, that you're on clean water. I was wondering if the trustees would investigate having an engineer put proper drainage on Hill Street, because 2 weeks ago, I went to Paul's and I came out and it was pouring. I mean, the water is literally going over the top of the curb. It's running right into the lake. And I think that would do a lot to clean up the lake. I mean, you gotta go there. I mean, it's literally 10 foot wide, 2 foot high, and just running right into Lake Agawam. And I think if they put proper drainage on that street, it would collect the water before, and it would
I
percolate.
think we put a lot, we'll get you the
They
email.
put on Windmill Lane, but
Yeah,
Yeah,
pretty much.
a lot of...
Well, Culver Hill, we just added.
But it's something that maybe CPF funds could be used for.
Yeah, I always,
Boy, oh boy, we're gonna have fun with this CPM.
They probably owe you $50 million.
We're gonna be in there, they're gonna be in there like...
I bet you never see a nickel of it.
You're wrong. You want to be our village advocate
The
to go
state
over
has
there and
approved
get
it.
the money from the town?
Yeah.
Am I licensed to carry a handgun?
all I can say is I always loved in the old driver's seat, there was a postcard, there was a photo from after the 1939 hurricane of someone in a rowboat at the corner of Jones Lane and Woodville. It's always one of my favorite photos. So it is a very, it's a site that has always been prone to flooding.
Big question is, all these drains that you put down, that you mentioned, what do they all run into the lake?
No, they catch. No, they catch.
Yeah.
Right.
And then it gets...
Do you ever use dry wells?
Yes, so we've added an incredible amount in the past 5 years. But sure, is it getting it all? No, it's on a huge deluge, no, it's still,
Right,
but
right.
we added some on Culver Hill, we added on Windmill, North Sea Road, Hill, so, we keep adding as we're going along.
We could do some underwater mining and collect all that poop from the bottom of the lake, we could sell it. It's fertilizer.
You can head that up. It's great ideas.
And that hat store of yours.
Buy the
That would be very fashionable, Southampton poop.
It would market well, I'm sure.
Other questions, comments?
I think that's good to close on that one.
And Thank you all for a spirited, calm conversation. Okay.